Awesome. Welcome to our weekly container security group meeting. First of all, just by way of announcements, Annabelle has been helping us out ever since Kyle left, and she's been splitting her time between DAST and container security. We had just barely hired a backfill for Kyle's position. That person is actually going to take over DAST, and Annabelle is going to be the permanently assigned to the container security team. So it's been a few months, but we now have a UX resource, or a UX person dedicated to container security. Lindsay, are you clapping or is that a raised hand? I can't tell.
That's a clapping. I'm excited. Yay!
Okay, I wasn't sure. All right, so things to demo. Looks like Alexander's got one in here. We've got a full agenda. So just to recap it, users can now filter by specific statuses instead of just toggling dismissed or undismissed. So dismissed. So he's continued to work on the alert dashboard. Looks like he's knocked another one out. So we're continuing to see some great progress there. Thanks for that, Alexander. So probably the biggest one that I wanted to cover today was just to formally put this epic through planning breakdown. This is the third iteration in our policy work, and this one is mostly front-end based, although there will be some back-end work to support it. We did a design review on March 2nd, so about a month ago. I didn't want to put it into planning breakdown just because it was the third iteration and we're still working on the first, so I didn't want to get too far ahead of things. But I just want to review that real quickly with the group and see if there are any questions, or do we feel comfortable that it's clear enough that we can start creating the implementation issues and move this to the refinement stage. I'll just walk through this real briefly just to do a quick recap. So this is the design issue for it. This is essentially taking what we've done and putting a UI onto it. So as part of this, the policies tab in the threat monitoring page would go away, and it'll be merged with this policies page. Right now it says scan policies. This would be changed to just say policies, and it'll be merged. So you can now have scan execution type policies here, as well as network policies, all in the same UI. You'll still be able to edit your policy project, but by default, when users first get here, when users first get here, the empty state is going to look like this. So we're actually not going to require them to set a policy project before they start making a policy. If they go and they click new policy and they create a new policy, we should just automatically create a new project for them behind the scenes and link it up and associate it. So that way we're reducing the number of setup steps that the users have to do. And it's just a little bit automated. So the first time they create a new policy, we're going to create that new project for them if it does not already exist, or they can click edit policy if they want to set it initially or if they want to change it afterwards.
Hey, Sam, would we have specific error handling for that scenario so we display a more appropriate message than you don't have any results to your filters?
No, I think this is the empty state that Annabelle designed. What are you suggesting?
I know for the vulnerability report, we have a number of different states. You know, we have a state that we display if they don't have any scanners set up versus a state that we display if there's no vulnerabilities returned in their results versus just one generic, there's nothing here state. It's just a little more helpful for the user to understand what their action is.
Right, so you're suggesting maybe a different empty state if they have no policies at all.
Right, we see that you don't have any policies, you know, maybe a bit of instruction or something, a link to the more appropriate document.
Yeah, that might be a
follow
good
up with Annabelle.
Sorry, go ahead.
I said I can follow up with Annabelle.
Yeah, that might be a good one to follow up with Annabelle on, and if it doesn't make it in here, we can always do it as a future iteration too.
And Sam, I'm curious about the environment column. Are we going to be able to create policies before having the having kind of a project deployed, therefore having an environment?
So if I come back to this design, so the scan execution policies will not have an associated environment with them, so it'll just show up blank. So if they do pick an environment, it's actually going to filter out all of the scan execution policies because there is no environment. So it's a sparse table in the sense that, not all of these fields are required for all of the types.
So then for the user to be able to see these scanners that don't have environment, it needs to select all environments.
Correct. Yep. Or
Okay.
you could have a no environment, option
Okay.
to drop down.
Okay.
So we already have this sidebar thing for our policies today for network policies, but this is what it would look like for a scan execution policy if you click on one of that type. So just providing some really high level details about it. And then when they come in for this iteration, there will be no rules mode. It's going to be YAML mode only. And actually, as I'm looking at this, I'm realizing we probably need to clean up these mocks just a little bit. But basically, they'll just get this YAML mode here. So we should actually remove, we're trying to clean this up for the network policies, but we should remove this name field and description field and the enable button because all of that will just be defined here in the YAML. So actually, we should remove these three, but otherwise this mock stands. You should just be able to select the policy type. And then if it's a scan execution policy, all you get is a text box to put in your YAML. So that's really this third iteration is just making some progress to let the users edit this in a user interface rather than having to go out to that separate project.
And for this one, we wouldn't have the parser yet, right?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
So no rules mode. We're not parsing this. We're just, saving the YAML exactly as they enter it here.
Okay.
This should actually create a merge request. Looks like Annabelle does have that down there, create merge request. So once they hit this button, it just moves them into the merge request workflow that we have in the rest of GitLab. So are there any, looks like we have just a little bit of cleanup in the mocks to do, but are there any questions? Are we comfortable starting to refine this and break it down into implementation issues on the back end? I think Alexander's already done the front end breakdown.
The one thing to note is to add, because we have the first thing merged, so we have something that's working, but during the review we had to limit the whole policies files to one single file with up to 5 policies in that file. So I believe before working on this one on the backend side, we need to address all the concerns that CI team had, just to make sure that we can have multiple files and so on. So that's the one thing that will block us, but not really. I mean, these are issues that I believe we'll be able to solve before working on the first iteration, but just wanted to make sure we understand that.
Yeah, thanks for that heads up. I don't think that should block our ability to refine this one, but that is a good point that it will be blocked while we finish up those concerns from the CI team. Yeah, thanks for that reminder, Alan. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and move this to refinement, and I'll let Tiago know in a comment there. Alan, you have the next one.
Yeah, so I've been working on it's a second iteration, I believe. So project level desk scan execution policies for scheduled scans. I prepared the initial implementation plan. I know the whole thing is in planning breakdown. I wasn't sure why. So I wanted to first, I was digging in, trying to understand what we need to do, but I believe we already did planning breakdown a long time ago when we were working on the initial POCs. But anyway, I prepared the implementation plan. I would love to hear some feedback. or questions. The only questions that I have is currently is this one. Maybe can I share my screen? Okay, I will not share my screen now, but to create a pipeline, we need to have a user, some kind of like owner of the pipeline who triggered that. Usually when we have a pipeline, it's because of something, because someone hit merge or someone created a comment and so on. So then we have a new pipeline created. So the author of the merge request or the commit will actually trigger the pipeline, and this will be the author of that pipeline. When we are scheduling pipeline, it's not that obvious because currently in GitLab, when you schedule a pipeline, not like normally when you go to CI scheduled pipelines and so on, and you'll hit start, it will take you as the creator of the schedule. But in this kind of policies, we don't have that concept. We don't have like the owner. Like we could have something like that by taking the user that actually triggered the commit that ended up like that updated the policy. Or we can specify the certain user that we want to use to be the owner user of the pipeline. I see your question, Sam. Does GitLab have any kind of system user? I'm not sure, probably not, because usually it will normally we would have like some kind of service account that will be responsible for doing that. We don't have something like that. No, that's what I think. I haven't seen anything, so I'll need to take a look. So I had 3 ideas. The first one, allow users to specify user in the policy, which is very simple. We'll just add additional key to the YAML file with user, and then we'll store the YAML file like the username. It's not the best solution. The second option would be to specify it, but on the UI level, when we are specifying which project is the scan execution policy project for selected project. So that's the other option, and the third option is to get actually the username from the last commit that was used to save given policy. I don't know which would be the best one. I would vote for the second option because this allow us to have some kind of validation of the username and so on. But the third one would be the easiest in terms of like for the user experience. It will be the best because they'll not think about assigning the user to be an owner. But to be honest, this is something that we need to consider what to do.
Yeah, I don't know if this is the same as option 3, so correct me if it is the same, but it would be really nice if the user did not have to think about this. I would expect that the user who's merging the policy into the project, I mean, they're the one who created the policy, so they're the one who's creating the pipeline. So I would expect that they would be the author of the pipeline.
Okay. All right, so that would be that'll be the third option because someone that is merging that will be the author of the comment. Yeah.
Just one thing, I think if you go like that, we should write something kind of information so the user know what's happening, that his name is going to be showing up in pipelines that they didn't trigger, just for the sake of clarity for the user. And that's the reason I would like option 1. I like option 3, but option 1 for me, it's very clear. We could default the user as the project owner or the user that's creating the policy. So it's very clear what's happening. If people see that in the future, or if someone is auditing the pipelines or commits, they're going to be able to link it back very quickly. That's the only advantage I see in step 2, in option 2.
Yeah, so on these scheduled pipelines, and my apologies, I should know this inside and out, but I'm forgetting where we landed on our discussion here. I know we were talking about either hiding it entirely so it doesn't even show up as a scheduled pipeline, or just making it read-only. Do you remember which one we decided on?
I do not.
And I don't know if, because we also were going back and forth deciding whether we should even use pipelines or just schedule it as like a cron job somewhere in the background. But,
we need to have a pipeline because like the whole thing, I mean, creating vulnerabilities in database, it's only triggered in the pipeline. If we want to have it outside of the pipeline, then we will need to rework lots of things. So we need to have a policy. I believe what you're referring to about setting something to be read-only. I remember that we've discussed that because on-demand scan, I believe that team is also working on scheduled on-demand scans. And we were thinking if we should somehow show our policies, like our on-demand scheduled scans from policies in that view. And I believe we ended up with thinking about read-only solution, but I believe that's not the case here, because we're trying to understand how to get the user, how to get the owner of the policy and owner of the pipeline. So
yeah, here
that's something we need to think about.
Discussion now, so.
Alan, I'm sorry if this question is a little bit unrelated, but would you mind sharing if the desk team is working on the on-demand scanner, also relying on the pipeline, or are they doing something different? Do you know that by any chance?
I don't know, but assuming what they're working on right now, in terms of like the whole on-demand scans, I believe they'll reuse what they have. So creating a new pipeline with the scan. So okay. That's
are we going to reuse their integration at some point?
Yes.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yes, actually, this is what we're working on. Like we're trying to make sure that we're only reusing their code, and if there's anything for us, we're just modifying the code to suit us. So we're not duplicating any logic.
Thank you.
So looking back, I think we decided to hide it entirely. So if you go in to view your list of scheduled scans in GitLab, it wasn't even going to show up there, just because it's kind of behind the scenes that this is a scheduled scan, and it's confusing to have it appear in both places, and then you can't edit it in the one. And so I don't know that we need to worry too much about, who the author is for this, since it's going to be hidden from the UI anyway. I suppose it would show up potentially in like audit logs for GitLab, but I think that's the only place that you might see it.
Okay, alrighty. So, but you're saying that we should hide it from the list of pipelines? So when we have a pipeline that is running on scheduled on-demand scan from scan policy, it should not be presented in the pipeline list. So the list of the already run pipelines, right?
Correct. Yep. So here's from 2 months ago. Looks like you actually asked this. Should this show up in the CI/CD schedules view? And I said I could go either way. If we do show it, then it needs to not be editable. And then Annabelle said she's leaning towards a no, not showing it, and she lists her reasons. So we could revisit that decision. Derek shares that same idea. Let's not show it in the scheduled pipelines. So I think that's where we landed as far as a decision there, was to not show it. Okay.
All right. Now I remember everything. Thanks.
Yeah, I'll copy that to the description of the, I'll copy this into the epic so that we have it all in one place after the call.
Yeah, thank you. I forgot that after 2 months spending with diapers only.
No worries. I forgot it as well when I created this epic. So yeah, I think in this case where they're not even going to see that makes me want even more to not have the user specify the author. That's just going to be one extra step, and they don't even know that we're creating a scheduled pipeline. It's a scheduled scan, not a scheduled pipeline as far as they're concerned. So if we can hide that, I guess my biggest requirement is let's just hide that from the end user. So whatever author we pick, let's make it so they don't have to input that.
Okay, so the one thing that's left here, it's actually at the end it will not be visible here in the CI/CD scheduled pipeline, so it will not be visible here. But since we're triggering a new pipeline, it will be visible here. because
okay.
it will have like new number and so on, and we will have to have the triggerer. But as you said, if we'll reuse the author of last comment in the policy project, then it's fine. We'll just have that person here, and that's it.
So Zamir,
Okay.
Have we ever considered like having like a bot user added to the project? I know that's a little bit outside of the scope, but if we start moving forward with having automatically triggered pipelines, it might be good to have like a bot user created to a project with a certain level of privileges. So then we can assign to this type of jobs, and it would reduce loss of ambiguity instead of adding someone else's name over there. Sorry for being picky on this.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a great idea. It's probably hard to do that right now because users still have access to that members tab, so they can add and remove people from the project. But eventually we'll want to hide away that members tab and kind of manage, have GitLab manage the permissions in that project rather than letting them do anything. And that might be a good time to introduce a bot user. Because if we add it now, then like what's to prevent them from just deleting it? I don't know. I think that could quickly become a pretty big engineering effort, because then we'd have to prevent them from deleting the bot user.
Yeah, I see that there is something in GitLab issues about that, but I don't know what's the reason and why it's not like public. So I'll share it in the meeting notes.
So Alan, for now, I think the easiest way that I would suggest it's just use the project owner. So then you don't have to keep querying and updating the table all the time, every time a user updates some settings over there. That's
yeah. All right.
All right, and we're about up on time. Ellen, did you have anything else on that point to discuss?
Nope, that's all.
Okay, and then this last one, I posted a comment comparing the different implementation approaches that have been proposed for production container scanning. I'd like for us to move forward using Starboard. Are there any concerns about moving forward with that, or at least doing a research spike to make sure that that will work for us?
No, I think we are ready for doing the research spike.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, I will I'll tag Tiago in that one as well, and we'll see if we can get that in the schedule. Great. Well, thanks everyone, and have a great week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.